Hey, welcome to another edition of Kyle Meredith with. It's the interview series presented by WFPK at WFPK.org, Consequence, and the Consequence Podcast Network. Thanks as always for making your way here, checking out the series. You know what to do. You like what you see, what you hear, hit that subscribe button. I put out 3 new interviews every single week, so it's a great way to keep up with all of your favorite artists. One of my all-time favorite artists I get to talk with today, Serj Tankian. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good. Thanks, Kyle. Thanks for calling me sir.
It's
as you get older, as you get the wise people start calling you sir.
Yeah, well, it's sort of I think it's a little bit of the Midwestern thing here too, or whatever Kentucky is, because I think I'd call like my kids friends sir. Maybe I don't need to. I don't need to at all. So
they're like 9, you know,
right,
hi, sir.
Well, good for you, sir, young sir. And then suddenly
yes,
I turned so you're like a Victorian age, you know, when I need to. It's
That's funny.
No, dude. So what we're talking about today, not exactly music, although we're going to touch on that with this project as well. But to make sure I got this right, not for touching the intangible composition. This is an art exhibition piece that you've put together and collaborated on.
It could have been the Vatican collection, not for touching the Vatican collection, or you know. Yeah. No.
What is this? Yeah.
It's musical. What is this? This is okay. So for years I've been doing, I've been painting. I've been painting so that I can see my musical compositions. So you know, the first time I painted, I had a musical composition, and I wanted to kind of see what it, you know, how it would look on canvas. You know, if I were to paint it. You know, so that was the whole mystery to me, and luckily I liked it. I liked the first one I did. It was called Disarming Time. And so I kept on painting. So all my paintings have musical compositions. If you walk into a gallery, you'll be able to listen to the painting with an app that does optical recognition that marries the music with the actual physical artwork. And so you can actually walk around on your earbuds, headphones, whatever, and listen to each painting and get really immersed. So when the idea of NFTs came out, I thought to myself, wow, this is kind of like the next step, because there's certain things we can do with the physical, you know, gallery space or museum space, if you will. But virtually, we can build so many more non-tangible, if you will, elements that interact with the senses to multiply the artistic effect of the piece, music, art, all of it together. But again, it all stems from music for me, because, you know, that's where I'm coming from, obviously. So that's what this is. They're basically NFTs of my art, my music, and this incredible kind of, I call it a dance, but it's basically incredible animation and digital painting done by a really good friend of mine who I've done multiple projects with. He's done 2 videos for me. His name's Roger Kupelian. He's done the artwork for my second book, Blaring Through Oblivion. He's done 2-3 videos for me, music videos, and he's just incredible. So we created this really immersive world of art and music for each of these NFTs.
They're really hypnotic. Like watching these, I didn't exactly know what to expect when I went into them. I kind of understood the concept, but it's not until you see, as you say, these paintings come to life and you know, take you on these, you know, sort of, I don't know what you say, like a you know, minute to 3-4 minute journey with some repetition that builds and transforms. And I just sat back with my mind sort of blown the entire time.
Oh, cool. Thanks. I'm so glad you enjoyed it. It is immersive. It does take you somewhere. The music is the biggest conduit to that, but the visuals and the way they're changing. And so, like, you know, if you were actually sitting with headphones on and, you know, with a big screen or your computer screen, you just kind of dive into it. And that's what art and music is. It's like taking us on these journeys and out of our kind of really crazy, busy lives. And even if it's just a few minutes to kind of take you somewhere else and make you feel something else, or relax your mind, or whatever it is, it's you know, it's amazing that we are able to do that.
Yeah. So you see the clocks come in, and you talked about Disarming Time as one of your first one. So I'll go back to there, because there is a a solid voice, I think you say, when you're talking about the art world. Like, I can see your artistic, your painting voice through this. When did you start realizing that part of you, that you were finding a style?
Yeah, I'm not sure I've even found a style per se, but my original idea actually stemmed from System of a Down's Mesmerize, Hypnotize days. I had seen this incredible documentary, this French documentary called Gleaners, where this woman had picked up a clock from a kind of like a pawn shop, let's say, and the clock itself didn't have any arms, and so it was being sold for really cheap because it didn't have arms. It was pretty much useless. But looking at a clock without arms always signified timelessness for me, literally. And so we used that concept. Darren's dad, Vartan, used the concept in the artwork for Mesmerize, Hypnotize with System of a Down. I gave the guys gifts during our recording sessions that were clocks from these pawn shops that I bought, and I painted over and ripped out their arms and did stuff with them and stuff. And so I've had the concept for years. And when I thought of painting, that was my first concept, using clocks to denote notes of my actual first measure of my composition on the canvas. And the arms of the clocks became the tails of the notes, like quarter, eighth, or whatever, in terms of, and so Disarming Time, my first painting, if you look at it, it's literally the first measure of my musical composition on a canvas painted, but the clocks actually denote the notes in that first measure. So that was my first thing, and that was a unique thing, mixed media. No one had done it exactly in that way. Plus the marriage of music with the artwork was very, very interesting to people and moving. And then I started more freeform painting and using my hands, using different tools and stuff like that. And it's hard to explain that, really, because there is no other element except, that motion that you're putting into the painting. But I really, truly enjoy it, and things come out of it, so I've been doing it for a number of years now. Held a bunch of physical exhibitions, and mostly in Los Angeles and New Zealand, two places I paint. A lot of gallery stuff, a lot of group exhibitions, some museum exhibitions, and then now going virtual.
Yeah. Well, those stood out for me. I mean, we've got this clock piece right over my shoulder here, which is always been one of my favorites. Yeah. But that's, I mean, when we look at art, we start to, maybe even subconsciously look for what represents us within it. And I've been obsessed with time for as long as I can remember, in a way that the science fiction that I choose is time travel, just whatever, it is, like that was in there. And to see these kind of floating through many of these pieces, and then try to figure out what that meant within the other big story that you were trying to tell. Does that become part of it? Because again, you sort of have what these clocks might represent as a whole, but then they fit within another complete story and theme altogether.
They do. To me, it's all about timelessness. Using time to denote timelessness. It's kind of like But look, the beauty of art and music is in the eye of the beholder, right? Like, it's whatever it means to you. I've been at exhibitions where someone will be looking and listening to the painting, and then they'll come up to me and they go, "That mermaid in the corner is incredible." And I'm like, "What fucking mermaid?" Right? So I'll go and look at it and I'm like, "Oh my God, it is a fucking mermaid." Right? Like, it's the universe speaking through you, and you don't know where that's going. And and same with lyrics, same with music. Like, you put out a record and people come up to you and be like, "Oh, that song talks about that. How did you know?" And I'm like, I didn't know. But like, there's all these things in the universe speaking through us. And so it is in the eye of the beholder. And that's what I love about it. It's like, that's why people can personalize art and music. That's why they feel so attached to it. It's not because they like this one artist, which is great, that created this thing. That's fine. But it's because it tells them a story about themselves. They remember the love, their heartbreak, whatever the song is about, or the angst that they have and the hypocrisy that they feel, like all of it, it talks to them, and then they talk to it, and it's the same with paintings. combined with music, paintings have a more guttural effect than the snobby world of art that we know it.
Well, it's that marriage of the senses too. I mean, as a generation and myself that was raised on music videos, those music videos created a world, and that world is who I assume those artists were in a lot of ways. This is for me another way of seeing this.
Totally.
One of the very first pieces, usually in my other studio, I'm surrounded by Bowie pictures just on the wall. And you've got a piece on here called Bowie R.I.P. And I would ask maybe an obvious question, but what took you there? What took you into that land of Bowie to put him on, or put this idea on canvas?
So the funny thing, I actually have a picture of David Bowie and I in the next room. And I met him twice backstage after his shows, which was incredible. He was such a generous guy with his time. And he had the same look on his face as the Dalai Lama, which is very non-judgmental, loving, almost childish and beautiful in that sense, That's what I remember about David Bowie. But the painting was about my dog, Bowie, who I named after David Bowie because my husky, who passed a few years back, had 2 different color eyes, exactly like Bowie's. Exactly. And I'm like, oh, so I called the dog Bowie. And when she passed, I painted that as an homage to her, life and stuff. But that was before the real David Bowie passed, which made it more sad.
Right. I don't mean to take that away from your dog then, but here we are. No, it works. I'll hit on a couple other pieces here too. Jazz 'Em Up, I think, was the most surprising of all of them. One, because you get a full-on sounds like an all-time classic jazz song that I'm like, I've heard that. No, this has got to be brand new though, right? Because of this thing, like, and the marriage of the pictures, which take me back to that. Oh, what did you call that? Sort of Art Deco thing, and the New York Times would use on their cartoon sect. It's like all of that marriage. Like, where did that piece come from?
So yeah, I mean, look, I was doing all of these musical pieces with clocks, and I wanted a lot of them. Some of them were really dark, and some of them were pastel-y and kind of in the middle in terms of colors. I'm talking about the paintings, obviously. And then this one, I made a concerted effort of almost making it like a kid's painting, like really bright neon-y colors and the music obviously very kind of lively and moving and kind of positive, being jazz. And so the painting became a very unique kind of, it really pops out, and it became like pop art with the same kind of vibe of some of my earlier paintings, which were basically the musical clefs and the clocks denoting the notes, and same kind of thing with like quadrants for each of the different colors and stuff like that. It just became a really poppy paint. We actually, years ago, the original was auctioned at a nonprofit and raised a lot of money for a nonprofit, which I'm really proud of, way early on, many years ago. Yeah.
Well, even just musically then, I mean, it's such a detour from some of the other pieces. Like I said, I mean, you're in that, right? You're playing that music and other people, like, what is that music?
That music is a combination of sampled beats, a lot of sampled beats, a lot of sampled instruments, some live instrumentation added on. Before I did Jazz is Christ with some of these incredible jazz musicians, but it was kind of put together, that has more live music than this. A lot of this is kind of, sampled loops and put together, but there is some live instrumentation on this.
Yeah. Well, it just builds so perfectly every time something else comes through there. I mean, compliments right there. And and I'll hit one more too, or maybe a couple more. I don't know. Projectiles, the way it changes midway is just so powerful. I know that's not a question. And there is a line, I think, that goes with the description there. Before they landed, they were so beautiful. And that was just one of those moments I had to stop and just sort of, damn,
Yeah. It's scary. It's scary, and it's interesting. Yeah. I mean, when I remember painting projectiles, and when I was gonna It's kind of like painting is a stream of consciousness thing. So you're there, your body's moving, you're not sure what you're doing. And then you step back and you go, what did I just do? Like, what is this called? It's not just what it's called, but what does this look like, right? And projectiles came to mind, and you know, bombing and stuff like that. And it's almost an artistic taste, kind of, not artistic taste, but an artistic angle of it, you know, like they look so beautiful before they fall, like, and then they explode, and or whatever. Like that's where the idea comes from. And the music, I can't think of the music right now because there's so many of them now. I have over 60 art pieces with music, so it's actually hard, and they're not. And there's no vocals in most of them, so it's hard to actually. I have to actually play it and go, oh, this is the music for projectiles. So it's kind of crazy. But what I love about being at a gallery, and every time I do an exhibit, there's at least 5 people who ask me this question. They come up and they're like, I love that piece. The music's so incredible. Where can I get the music? Assuming that it's available. And I go, you can't. Mm-hmm. And they're like, what? And I'm like, it's only available when you're standing in front of this painting. And it's and you just find people looking at you going, well, why wouldn't you release it? I mean, exactly for this purpose. Like there's this intrinsic relationship you're trying to create, you know, and in our industry has been so commodified. It's been so, you know, music has become from physical packaging to digital downloads to streaming. It's become, and to, you know, the early pre-Napster days when music was taken basically stolen. You know, we put out a record with System called Steal This Album, right? You know, because it was downloaded before we can actually finish the actual, you know, music itself. And so this speaks to that, you know, is that music's become so commodified. It's worth nothing. It's worth nothing. You, as an artist, you spend months working on stuff, years sometimes, you put it out, and its value is so marginal, you know, by creating a physical piece, which renders itself valuable because of its physicality, because of its, hopefully, you know, elevated artistic intrinsic values. And marrying that with the music that you love but may not consider valuable gives it even more value. And to make it exclusive retains that value. Now, that doesn't mean I haven't released some of the pieces here and there in other collections, musical collections, like I did with the cinematic series I released, which is a double record. I think there might be a few songs in there from the artwork. So it's not like I'm like really holding on to these. When they belong somewhere else, they can go. But overall, I haven't released them. Maybe I will one day release a record of like 120 musical pieces called art, you know, or whatever.
Well, it's not so different from the score work in that sense that you do. I mean, these are different, you know, and I'm looking at what you just did, a couple of those. I Am Not Alone. I'm checking my notes here. Truth to Power. I mean, those are the 2 most recent scores read. But I don't know how similar of work that is for you. Like when you're thinking of this music has to fit what's going on in the film versus this music has to fit what's going on with this, you know, painting vision that I have. Like how similar is that process?
It depends. So there's been a few cases where I've actually scored to the painting, which was my original, you know, one of my goals. Like before I started painting myself, my idea was to find a series of paintings that I enjoyed and to write musical compositions for them, you know. And then I thought to myself, well, fuck, why don't I just paint them myself, you know? And so the music came first at that point, you know, because I'm going from the music to the painting to paint to my music, because everyone listens to music when they paint, right? And so it's kind of backwards film scoring, right? It's like creating the film after the music, right? Whereas with film scoring or TV series scoring, which I've been doing this year, I'm working on my second series for a large streamer right now, a docu-series. It's, you know, you got picture first generally, you know. There are occasions where you are scoring based on a theme, concept, and then, you know, kind of interlacing your music with the music editor and then finalizing later, which happens on series more so than films. Films are very parallel. You start from one place, you end up in another. You might have multiple edits coming in and screwing up your kind of, flow and the way that you want it to transition between pieces, but that's normal in that world. But at least it starts from the left and finishes on the right, on your screen. But with painting, yeah, it's wild, And what would be wild is actually connecting all of them in a way where you can somehow create a large series of paintings that are different. Each canvas is different. But they all somehow connect, and you create music that connects in the same way to all of them. Mm-hmm. Wow, that would be pretty wild. There's an idea.
There was this let's just call it a toy before my time. I think it was out in the 60s, but that's what it did. It was a little strip, one of those little like image strips that kind of connected through the TV. And while it was doing, there was a record player connected, and it, like I said, it was a little toy though. And so whatever image you were seeing, that's, you were hearing that on the right. Like,
that's cool.
I can see how you're talking about that, because that's, it's, yeah. I don't know where I'm going with that. I'm derailing here. It's
no. You mentioned something really important in the beginning, is interacting with the senses. The more that you the more that you interact with more senses, the more that you have a dedicated, art lover, right? Mm-hmm. Because I even thought, if we ever do like a big museum thing one day, I'd love to have dedicated small rooms, almost like booths, for each of the paintings, where the full ambiance is controlled. So you're not just seeing the painting and hearing the music, which is a given, but maybe like three-dimensional things happening, just like they are in the NFT, things coming at you, things moving, things shaping, smells, lights, colors, basically walking into the painting. Right? You're literally walking into the vibe of that painting. So if that vibe is dark, then everything is dark. The music's dark, the sounds, the smells are grainy, right? You walk into a painting that's, beautiful and bright, then everything's bright, right? It's encapsulating. And I'm really interested in that. I'm interested in creating that experience, which encapsulates the majority of our senses.
Yeah. And the byproduct is that you end up creating nostalgia in a present moment. You create that nostalgia especially when you add more than one people into it. It's all mind-blowing stuff, what all this stuff does with your brain and your senses. It's
of course smell is nostalgic, music is extremely nostalgic, as we know, sounds, visuals. There are certain visuals I remember from my childhood really kind of penetrate my senses. Like, if I see them anywhere in the world, I just freeze for a second and I go, I've seen that before. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure where, but it's really far back, It's pretty cool.
I know we're hitting the clock here, no pun intended. But so just a little bit of music question here. Elasticity came out, what was that, earlier in the year, right? And
yeah, I think it was March.
I know the original story went that might have been a System album at some point, but now you've done this. Now you've done the rock side like this, and this one, not so different than the solo stuff, but it feels different. Like, what does this open the door for you? Have you started to think about that side of you, the rock side, and what happens next?
Elasticity was really fun to put out, actually, because it was very full of life. It was very moving. Something like the song Like Your Mom, which was, people were just like blowing their, it was blowing their minds, which was fucking awesome. And I enjoy doing the rock stuff, and I still have more rock songs, and they'll probably come to me at a particular time. But mostly I've been focusing on scoring, art, putting out a lot of releases. I mean, this year, by the end of this year, I counted, I would have had a dozen releases of things. That includes 2 films, 2 soundtracks. We're putting out 2 live records in November, December with the FCC on tour, my backup band from 2008, 2009. And we're doing the NFT thing. We had a live gallery exhibit in July. We did Elasticity, Truth to Power, I Am Not Alone. Both films came out. Both soundtracks came out. God, what else? 2 cinematic records, a piano concerto called Disarming Time, like this 24-minute incredible modern piano concerto I did that I love, and also my poetry collection, my poetry suite, which is a whole record of poetry with cinematic music that we released later this summer. So it's kind of wild, man. It's been a year of like probably the most releases I've had, and it's just whatever comes. If rock comes, I do rock. Right now, right before I called, we connected. I was working on, and I'm just created a concept for I don't want to say opera, but it's more of like a very unique choral world with classical instruments. I'm thinking of calling it Invocations, and this is the first time I'm even talking about it because I literally just figured this out. I have these incredible tracks that I've done over time, a couple of which I've released on cinematic stuff or soundtracks, but they are in that world where they just pull your spirit out of your body, you know, with the sounds and the instruments and the vocals. And so I'm thinking about like operatic singers, death metal singers, everything in between, full choir, full orchestra, and just like a really wild kind of concept to do live, and maybe record it or maybe replicate it in different areas of the world. But that's where I am this week. But by the end of December, I might be writing more rock songs. So I don't know. The answer to your question is it all comes, and when it comes in a uniform. You know, you know, when it comes in the rock uniform, I fucking rock it. When it comes in a classical uniform, I classic it. You know?
Well, I tell you, I've been putting on the scores just, you know, to kind of chill out too, and just getting lost. I haven't, admittedly, I haven't seen either film yet, but I have these images in my own head, and I can't wait to kind of actually see how it met the real thing. So I love what you do. You make it so fun to be a fan of your work. So thanks for just, you know, doing all of this stuff. I think it's hilarious because if you run into any friend of yours on the street and they're like, what have you been up to, man? That's a loaded question. It sounds like right there. So.
Yeah, I just go, oh, just working, you know, family life, you know, basic, keep it basic.
Serj, thank you so much for taking the time. Again, the newest thing, well, I can't even say the newest thing anymore, but the thing again that we've talking about, not for touching the intangible composition. It's so cool what you've been up to. So it's a pleasure talking to you about it.
It's a real pleasure talking to you as well. Thank you. Thank you for your time, and have a wonderful day.
You too, man. Take care. We'll see you around.
All right, brother.
All right.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
See you. Bye.